What if things went different in the MCU Phase 1? The Marvel Cinematic Universe is the biggest franchise maybe ever with over 30 movies, with the most successful one being Avengers Endgame, which is the second most successful movie, only behind Avatar. The MCU is divided into phases, and I guess now sagas as well, and today I'll talk about the first phase. In the next 2 months, I'll do Phase 2 and 3. Like in the other two future videos, 2 scenarios are for the solo movies, and 1 for each Avengers movie. But what if that didn't happen? What if things went different in the MCU Phase 1? What if Tony died in Iron Man? In this timeline, the Stark Industries bomb actually kills him. This would anger the Ten Rings and Obadiah Stane, as they wanted him alive. Fortunately for Stane, he would become the new CEO of Stark Industries, and they continue to sell weapons. The Incredible Hulk would be almost exactly like in our own timeline, except for the fact that Tony doesn't get a post-credit scene because he is already dead. Unsurprisingly, without Iron Man 2 wouldn't happen. Ivan Vanko wouldn't want revenge from anyone because the Stark line died with Tony. Justin Hammer would be a rival of Stane, but wouldn't use a criminal for anything. Rhodey obviously wouldn't have become the war machine as remains in the Air Force, and his legs probably continue to work fine. The events of Thor and Captain America First Avenger would play out just like how they did in the original timeline. The big change occurs in Avengers. Loki still arrives and mind controls Clint, only to be captured Steve and Natasha. The fight with Cap and Thor would be a draw, and he would join their side. But without Tony, they fail to restart the helicarrier. The crash would have killed Clint and Natasha, while Cap just barely survived. Hulk and Thor were rather unharmed. Thor, Captain America and Hulk would attempt to defeat the Chitauri, but are unable to. Being frustrated, the World Security Council nukes Manhattan, but this time there is nobody to redirect it. The blast killed the Chitauri and Loki, but also the remaining Avengers and many civilians. The invasion would be stopped, and what remains of Manhattan are a yellow stone that was inside the scepter and a blue one inside the Tesseract. With Iron Man, Thor and Captain America dead, their sequels obviously don't happen. Sam Wilson would be a normal person that runs around Washington at average speed instead of becoming the Falcon, and Bucky still operates as the Winter Soldier. Guardians of the Galaxy would play out just like in OTL. The crash of the helicarrier severely harmed S.H.I.E.L.D., and Hydra took over and get their hands on the Space and Mind Stone. They used the Mind Stone to make Pietro and Wanda Maximoff into Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Things took a heavy turn when a spaceship arrived at Sokovia. Out came Ebony Maw, Proxima Midnight, Corvus Glaive and Cull Obsidian, who are led by the Purple Titan Thanos, who possesses the Power and Reality Stone. Hydra would send in their forces, and the twins, but all would be decimated. Thanos then takes the stones and leaves again. From Gamora he learns where the Soul Stone is and sacrifices her for it, and after a fight against the wizards takes the Time Stone and snaps, killing 50% of all life. The only surviving Avengers are Rhodey, who isn't an Avenger, Nebula and Rocket, who never meet the Avengers, and Ant-Man, but they wouldn't be able to revert the snap. With that, Thanos wins fully, and his work won't be undone. When Odin inevitably dies, either Hela would take over Asgard or Surtur unleashes Ragnarok, but with the Asgardians still on Asgard. With T'Chaka and both of his kids T'Challa and Shuri dying at the same time, Wakanda falls to Eric Killmonger. In this timeline, with Iron Man dying, the other original Avengers would die in 2012. Actually, a lot of people die and only 4 people still survive, and one of them not being an Avenger, and 2 never meeting THR Avengers. What if Captain America wasn't frozen? In this timeline, after Captain America defeats the Red Skull, he lands safely on Greenland and was soon later detected by locals who managed to bring him back to the US. He got a cold, but won the war. He would marry Peggy, but may still operate during the Cold War, maybe actually combating the Red Guardian at one point. He would also meet the Winter Soldier and would learn of his true identity. Like in our own timeline, he manages to get through and Bucky switches sides. Given that he was born in 1918, he would be 77 by time of Captain America, which plays in 1995. And since the retirement age of the US is 65, he'd be a pensioner for 12 years now. Bucky, too, is now old. In 2000, Tony Stark would still find himself in a cave and become Iron Man, while Bruce Banner becomes the Hulk. The events of Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, and Thor would be like our own. In 2012, Loki still goes to Earth and mind controls Hawkeye. Nick Fury would then gather Natasha, Tony and Bruce with Iron Man and Natasha capturing Loki only for Thor to show up. He would still fight Iron Man, but without Captain America intervening, Iron Man would stand no chance, and either is defeated or even killed. Maybe Thor destroys his arc reactor, causing the splinter to reach his heart and him dying. Thor would end up finding the Tesseract and takes himself and Loki back to Asgard, where Loki goes to prison. Nick, Natasha, and Bruce would be completely confused. With Loki gone, the scepter also stops controlling Clint. The events of Thor: The Dark World would be just like in our own timeline, and the movie just as bad. The Guardians of the Galaxy would also be like in our own timeline, but done right. The Hydra plot would still be discovered, and Nick Fury, Natasha Romanoff, and Clint Barton may be able to defeat them. Sam Wilson never becomes the Falcon. In 2015, Hulk, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and War Machine would engage Hydra in Sokovia and defeat them. Wanda wouldn't make someone see that the Avengers are gonna die, as the reason she and Pietro hated the Avengers was because of Tony, as a Stark Industries weapon killed their parents. They would leave and try to have a somewhat normal life in Sokovia, with Pietro stealing stuff and giving it to the people. Ultron would never exist. The events of Ant-Man would be like in our own, and Captain America: Civil War wouldn't happen, as Steve and Bucky are old, Tony is dead, Clint doesn't return from retirement, Sam and Wanda aren't Avengers, Vision doesn't exist, and Sokovia didn't happen. T'Chaka would also not get killed, meaning that for now we don't have T'Challa as the Black Panther. Spider-Man, meanwhile, remains as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 wouldn't be any different, while Spider-Man: Homecoming and Black Panther don't happen. Thor, without visions of the Infinity Stones, didn't leave Asgard, and ends up finding out that Loki is Odin earlier. Ans retrieves him, who still dies in 2017. Hela would still show up, and would be defeated by Thor and Loki, but at the price of Asgard. In Infinity War, Thanos still kills half of all Asgardians, including Loki, with Thor being found by the Guardians. Thanos still takes Gamora and then sacrifices her for the Soul Stone. Without Bruce, Doctor Strange wouldn't be warned, and Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian take him and take the Time Stone. He would then be killed. Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive fight Natasha and Rhodey, but were saved by Hulk. Later, the Guardians shows up, and so do all 4 of Thanos' children. All 4 are killed, but then Thanos comes and takes the Mind Stone. Unfortunately, he didn't go for the head, and Thanos snaps. Only Thor, Natasha, Bruce, Rhodey, Rocket, and Nebula are left with Carol and Scott soon later, but are unable to build a time machine without Tony, and so the snap isn't reverted. In this timeline, Thanos would have won and more people would die, mostly Avengers. What if Loki won the Battle of New York? In this timeline, the nuke isn't launched, and the fight continues without an end, and the Avengers are getting pushed back more and more. Hawkeye and Black Widow are the first to die, followed by Captain America and Iron Man. Thor would be brought to Loki, who kills him personally. Lastly, Hulk can't be defeated, and so he is kept captive. Loki now controls New York. It was then, when Thanos arrived. Loki thinks that he is now more powerful than Thanos with 2 stones and an army, and attacks the Purple Titan. But with his army turning against him, he was killed by Thanos. He took the Scepter and Tesseract and destroyed both of these and took the stones. In 2013, Jane Foster discovers the Ether, and was soon attacked by the Dark Elves led by Malekith. But they were all suddenly killed by Thanos. He then distracts the Ether out of Jane and maybe kills her. He then turns it into the Reality Stone. In 2014, instead of sending Ronan, he goes himself, as he already has 3 stones. He ends up successfully taking the stone, and again, he may or may not commit murder. Gamora would be taken captive. Without Captain America and Black Widow, Hydra successfully takes control of S.H.I.E.L.D., and the Winter Soldier still operates for them. Without the Mind Stone, Hydra won't be able to turn Pietro and Wanda Maximoff into Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and without Tony, Ultron and Vision don't exist either. Ant-Man would play out like in our own timeline, and Civil War doesn't happen as Steve, Tony, Natasha and Clint are dead. Vision doesn't exist. Sam, Wanda and Peter aren't Avengers. Bucky is the Winter Soldier. T'Challa isn't the Black Panther yet, and Sokovia didn't happen. So far, the only Avengers are Ant-Man and War Machine. Doctor Strange would happen like in our own timeline. Thanos would end up getting Gamora to tell him where the Soul Stone is, and he would sacrifice her for it, meaning only the Time Stone is left. Spider-Man Homecoming and Black Panther don't happen, and when Odin died, he had no sons to inherit the throne, and so Hela does, and she won't be defeated. In 2018, Thanos, Ebony Maw, Proxima Midnight, Corvus Glaive and Cull Obsidian arrive on Earth, with Doctor Strange and Wong having little preparation time and no Bruce or Tony. They manage to overpower the two wizards and take the Time Stone. Thanos then snaps and 50% of all life is dead. The only surviving Avengers are Captain Marvel, War Machine and Ant-Man, who is in the quantum realm. Captain Marvel and War Machine would kill Thanos, but he already had destroyed the stones, so they can't do anything. When T'Chaka died, both of his kids are dead, and so Eric Killmonger inherits the throne. The God Butcher would be without Thor, able to kill all the gods, including Hela and Zeus. In this timeline, Thanos would be quite easily able to collect all the stones and snap away 50% of life. He won't be stopped, and only 3 Avengers are still alive. In all 3 of these timelines, the Battle of New York goes horribly and Thanos ends up winning without the original 6 Avengers. If you liked the episode, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. Goodbye.